We set a goal to change the way the world works, lives, learns, and plays, and perhaps almost as much as any other company, especially from the business side, we've done that. I'm also very proud about our people. I mean, what we've done at Cisco, our culture, people like Chuck, our whole organization, and yourself, the team that we built and how deep that culture is and how we've extended that to our ecosystem of partners and shareholders and customers. Probably the third is, I would argue, we've reinvented ourselves constantly. We were willing to disrupt in ways that others are not, and we've continuously led in terms of number one or number two in every product area that we went into, and that's pretty exciting. I guess much like a parent, I'm so proud of how we've handled our setbacks. Most companies, when you get knocked down, have trouble getting back up. And it's what we want to understand is we got back up quicker than almost anybody else. And we come back, Chuck, each time stronger than we went into the slowdown. And that I'm very proud of. And I guess the last issue is really how the internet and Cisco's role in that has changed the world. That's probably my number one takeaway, Mel.
The first idea is what you've already learned here at school. Listen. The ability to listen to leaders, and I've had the tremendous honor to talk to almost every global leader. President Medvedev in Russia with Arkady being his right arm in terms of a strategy to reinvent their country. Prime Minister Singh in India. President Clinton, who is the best I've ever seen at handling questions. The ability to talk to Thomas Friedman and to explain 7 years ago how bloggers and PR, when he said to me, John, do you realize that every person is now going to be a blogger? And is it going to be paparazzi? And I said, yes, I do. And it was too simple a question. What he was saying to me is, it's going to change your business, the way you interface to your customers, and the way you're just going to imagine. But one of the top leaders of the world looked at me and said, John, if I were to give you advice, and I asked him for advice, he said, before you do something important, take time to go to the bathroom. I'd been waiting for this meeting for a long time, and I was kind of disappointed. He saw it in my eyes, and he then said, it'll become more important to you when you're older. I was still disappointed, and I walked down with him a little bit further, and he said, John, do you understand what I just told you? And finally, I got it. He said, when you finish one meeting or one event, take time to summarize that. Don't be thinking about it when you go to the next one. When you go into that next session, whether it's with an individual, a patient if you're a doctor, or a business meeting, take time to get stress off of you. Don't go in with any extra stress. And third, prepare well for the next session. Those lessons have served me very well. So thought one, listen, what you've done very well here at Duke.
When you think about the next generation organization structure, we called it a dynamic organization structure, but we're really talking about an organization structure that is built on social networkings. The ability to move from command to control, which I clearly love, because when I say turn right, 70,000 people at Cisco turn right. That is really powerful, but it's only powerful if you're focusing on one or two things per year. When you suddenly start to move into a whole bunch of market adjacencies, do things that no other company's ever done, you can't do it with that structure. And while I'd like to tell you we moved that way because of social networking, the power of YouTube and Twitter, etc., the reason we did it, our old form of structure just would not get the job done on what we wanted to accomplish. I'm going to talk about leadership and how it's changed both at Cisco for myself and for what we're trying to recruit into the company. I'll talk about how culture, much like it is here at the Haas School of Business, is such an important part of people's success or not. And I'm going to talk about innovation. And let's start from the beginning. You have a choice of being one of the leaders at a company. Do you want to be a very innovative company, or do you want to be one that is really good at operational execution? And you're competing against your counterpart who does the opposite. How many of you want to be very innovative? How many want to do operational execution? The first group just lost. Operational execution trumps innovation. All the studies coming out, Jim Collins, from Good to Great, etc., show that. True in our industry as well. And while I did the same thing you did, when he asked me, he said, John, which one wins? And I said, Jim, it's simple. It's operational execution. He said, how did you know? I said, you asked the question. I would have said innovation, but the fact that he asked it indicated the verse. Now, the point that I'm making is you want to catch market transitions. You want to be able to listen, whether it's from your customers or others, and when you see those transitions occurring, connect the dots, and that's what sustainable differentiation is about.
The first Cisco Live I went to, there were 25 people in the room. And over the last 25 years, we've learned how to work together to change the world. When you look at the opportunity in front of us, when we first realized the power of the network, we said it was going to change the way the world works, lives, learns, and plays. And a lot of people thought, no, we're just techie geeks. And yet we have. But you haven't seen anything yet. It isn't the next generation of the internet we're here to talk about today. It is the digital era, which will completely transform by a factor of 5 to 10-fold what the internet has done to date. And the cool thing is, we together are going to make it happen. This is my favorite event, as Karen said. It is a chance to listen to you, for you to learn, share ideas, for us to understand what we're doing well, to network together and see what we have to improve on. But it's also a chance to paint a vision of where this industry is going to go and how it's not just going to transform the world, it'll transform every business at a technology pace. And when you think about what we talk about today, I'll lay the foundation. Chuck and I will cover it in Q&As shortly thereafter. And over the next 3 days, if we do our job right, we'll give you more and more information, and we'll learn from each other where we think this leads. The concept is righto. Are we ready? Are we ready in the mid-90s for the first phase of the internet that literally changed the world? Today, are we ready to run the fastest race that's ever been run? It will be over a terrain that we've not seen before. It will be at a much faster pace, and it will constantly morph as it evolves. It will become a digital world where it will change our life, our health, our education, our business models at a pace of a technology company change, not just the pace of normal government or business. And it is all about innovation in this new world, not just connectivity. It is about how we have the courage to change, how together we build fast IT that is the foundation for this future, that will allow us to disrupt others as opposed to each of us being disrupted ourselves. It is the topic with CEOs today. And a year ago, you almost had to buy them coffee or drinks to get the attention. 90% of the CEOs believe they must become a digital company. We also wanted to share, just like we did in the 90s, we shouldn't just talk about this and say what we should do together. We will be the best example of how a company becomes digital, and with the speed of fast IT gets the business results and also allows us to break away from our competition. The technology is actually the easiest part. It's the organization change, the cultural change, and the process change that I also want to talk about. If you look at where we're going in terms of the importance of being bold, back up one slide, please. It is having the courage to make this change before it's obvious to others what is possible. It is the ability as we go forward to realize that when we shared these views just 2 years ago, and I showed you this chart, and we talked to many of the business and government leaders around the world, and we said, do you know that only 25% of the Fortune 500 is going to exist in a meaningful way and in 25 years? And they said, no, that's too aggressive. It's going to be much slower. And when we said 90% of businesses would have a serious economic setback and only 10% of those businesses would ever come back, it looked way too aggressive. The good news and the bad news, I'm here to tell you, I was really wrong on this. It was way too conservative. 40% of businesses in this room, unfortunately, will not exist in a meaningful way in 10 years. The transformation is going to be exactly like high-tech's transformation, where if you miss a market transition or a business model, underestimate your competitor of the future is not your competitor of the past. The ability to use fast IT to deliver on this transition becomes key to all of our futures. Why do companies succeed and why do they fail? It hasn't changed, except that it's occurring at an exponential pace. Companies who miss market transitions. They can be technology transitions, mainframes to minis, mini computers to PCs to software. They can be business model transitions or economic. They can be not understanding that IT no longer enables your business strategy, it is your business strategy. Second is they keep doing the right thing too long. It is so easy to say, this is my core business. I just have to continue doing that same thing again and again. And those companies that do that will be exactly like the mainframe companies who didn't move down, the voice companies who didn't move into data. The importance, however, is it's now every industry. You've seen that with video capabilities. You've also seen it with other business models. But perhaps the toughest things that leaders have to do is they have to reinvent their company. They have to reinvent their leadership team. And candidly, the CEO, she or he, has to reinvent themselves. But what gets companies in most trouble is getting too far away from their customers and their partners. The inability to have the trust where you'll tell us what we're doing right and what we have to do different. And say, how do we solve these problems together? Now, we talked, and everybody's beat the heck out of some of these concepts like Uber. But understand, Uber is not in any way a transportation move. It is a technology move that completely changes the use of asset utilizations, both cars and drivers, in a way that will exponentially grow how that service is used. In San Francisco, it is 5 times the number of rides that were being done when Uber started in total for the whole city. An Airbnb, it isn't about hospitality. It's about how you share a common set of assets. All of us understand the Amazon example with retail. But there was an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal this last week, and it basically said that in Europe, they were going to begin to have rental sales forces. And that hit near and dear to my heart, and Chuck's as well. But what it basically said was you could have a sales skills that you could purchase by the utilization or by the drink, if you will, where this organization would train salespeople based on the industry they're in, their skill sets, and you could just buy it as you go. Now, understand, when I read that, Rob, that was not about a sales force. That could be about a finance organization, an engineering organization, a service organization. And I'll go out on a limb here. I think you're going to see some huge companies that have 2 employees, a CIO and a CEO. I hope the CEO's there. But what I'm sharing with you is if your organization does not change its structure, if it stays in silos, if the silos do not work together toward a common end goal, if you don't digitize across the board, you're going to get taken out by companies that look Silicon Valley-ish in automotive, in finance, in legal, in every category. It is the courage to realize that you have to change dramatically in order to win. And yet change makes us all uncomfortable, including us at Cisco.
The fourth one, it's so easy when a friend or family member or a company colleague has a problem just to give them their space. And let me encourage you not to do that. I think it's so important to be there for your friends and family and your colleagues or your organization when they're in trouble more than any other time. I ended up at my company purely because of how I treated somebody 10 years before that I didn't think would ever have an influence over in the future when they were in trouble. At our company, I know every illness to the best of my ability that's life-threatening for every employee, their spouse, or their children. Last Friday night, I was headed into a pretty intense work week, and I knew it. And on Sunday night, I was doing my voicemail, and I got a call from one of our family members at Cisco whose daughter had a terrible form of leukemia, and the bone marrow transplant did not work out. She was scheduled to come here to Duke 1 week later and meet with a key doctor here that might have a chance to really make a difference. And he had been traveling around the world, so he wasn't available until Friday, but she only had 2 weeks to live. That morning, I called up Victor, your dean of the med school and health services, and I said, Victor, is there any way you can help this person? They moved it all the way up to earlier in the week. The ability to reach out and help an individual family member when they need you is key. Friday evening, before I went home, one of our employees had lost their 23-year-old son that day. I called them and said, what can we do, and how do we make a difference? And while some of you might say that's not important for a business leader or a leader of an organization to do, your friends and family need you most when you're in trouble. And that's when you build lasting relationships that have huge impact on the rest of the world. President Broadhead was kind enough to talk about the award Cisco's won. It is our efforts in the Middle East, our efforts after Katrina in the South, our efforts after the earthquake in China that allowed us to achieve those awards. And by the way, when we achieve those awards, we've also been one of the most successful companies in history from a profit point of view and best places to work. And for 19 of you coming to work at Cisco, thank you. We're really excited about seeing you. Take risks. Do not be afraid to fail. That was the key thing I learned in Silicon Valley. If you go through life much like playing basketball back on your heels, your opposition blows right around you. Have the courage to take those risks. Have the courage to look at the person that you're in love with and say, I'm committed to you, I want to get married. Have the courage to take that job that you were hesitant about doing. I see a lot of heads going like this, no way. Have the courage to take that job that you're hesitant about doing. Do not sell short your dreams and aspirations. In Silicon Valley, it's the red badge of courage for teams to get knocked on their tail. It's the ones that get knocked on their tail and get up that really make a difference.